In this second lesson on the anatomy of yoga practice, we'll look at some particular parts of the body located in the shoulders and torso. So first, the pelvis. We'll start at the bottom. The sit bones are the parts of the pelvis that you sit upon, and they're referred to a lot in yoga classes. And they're located where you see the circles. The sacrum is a wedge-shaped bony complex that forms the part of the spine where it fits into the pelvis, and you see it circled here. The sacroiliac, sometimes called the SI joint, is where the sacrum meets the pelvis. Now to the shoulder area. First, the shoulder blades are on the back of the body. They're also referred to as the scapula. The shoulder joint is located on the shoulder blade. This is where the upper arm meets the shoulder blades. The upper arm, that is the shoulder joint, can move in all directions at the shoulder joint. It's one of the most mobile areas in the body. And in addition to the shoulder joint itself being very mobile, the shoulder blade upon which the shoulder joint is located also moves in all directions. So the position of the upper arm is determined both by the position of the shoulder joint and the shoulder blade, which is the platform for the shoulder joint. Now to the wrists, which tend to be weak in the modern human and which can be helped a lot in yoga classes, move in many different directions, but the ones that we focus on most in asana classes are a little bit of flexion that you see on the left, but very frequently you'll be in wrist extension, which you see on the right, like you see pictured here. So it's very important when the wrist is weight-bearing in this position, which again is called wrist extension, that you press down through your hands as you simultaneously press the forearm toward the fingertips. These two actions together stabilize the wrist and protect it from injury. Here you see another example. By simultaneously pressing down through the hands and resisting the forearms forward, you engage all of the major muscles of the wrist, which prevents you from sinking your weight into the joint itself and helps create a healthier, more stable joint, a more optimally functioning joint in terms of strength and flexibility. Let's look a little bit at breathing now. Very simple explanation of a normal breath. We look at the diaphragm, which is the primary muscle of breathing. It is a smooth muscle and it attaches to the spine, the ribs, and the breastbone. When it contracts, it flattens downward, creating a vacuum in the chest, which is filled by oxygen pulled in via the nose and the mouth. And when it relaxes, the pressure of the abdominal organs below it presses it upward, and that pushes breath, which is carbon dioxide, out of the lungs on the exhale. So here you see another image of it. On the left, you see the relaxed diaphragm. The abdominal contents, which are under pressure, press upward onto the diaphragm, which in turn presses the contents of the lungs out of the body. On the right, you see when the diaphragm contracts, it flattens downward, and that creates a vacuum in the lungs, which pulls breath into the lungs. Now let's look at the vertebral column, the spine. The spine is made of bones called vertebrae, and it's the central supporting structure of the human body. It houses the spinal cord, and that is the central channel for the nervous system. So it's very important. Along a healthy spine, in its neutral position, there are natural curves that help support weight and movement. And you see it pictured here. These curves describe a neutral spine and are not to be confused with movements of the spine, which can go in all different directions. Each curve has a name. There are 7 vertebrae that make up the cervical spine, that's your neck. The 12 vertebrae below that, to which ribs attach, are called the thoracic spine. The 5 vertebrae below that, between the ribs and the pelvis, are part of the lumbar spine. Then below that you have the sacrum, which is a wedge-shaped section of the spine that's formed by 5 vertebrae that are fused together. This is where the spine connects to the pelvis. Finally, the coccyx, also known as the tailbone, is made of 4 fused vertebrae. We stabilize the spine, particularly the lumbar spine, that is the part between the ribs and the pelvis, with a complex muscle process that we refer to simply as core stability. The section of the torso between the rib cage and the floor of the pelvis has little support from bones. It's different from other parts of the body. Made almost entirely from liquid, which is a highly unstable substance, the abdominal cavity is supported by a wall of muscle that surrounds it. When the wall of muscle that surrounds the liquid contents of the abdomen contracts globally, meaning all of it moves inward, it reduces the space that the abdominal contents have to occupy. Since space is reduced and volume is not, that means it becomes firmer. If you put the same amount of water, pictured here, into a balloon that is a lot smaller, the whole thing would be more firm because of the pressure that the contents would be under in a smaller space. And that's how core stability works. When a person moves, instead of a balloon getting smaller, the core muscles squeeze the contents of the abdomen inward. That compression makes the contents of the abdomen firm and stable. And because the lumbar spine is at the back of the abdominal cavity, it is held still if the abdominal cavity is held still. And we do that with this core stability work of the wall of muscles that surrounds the entire abdomen, front, back, and sides. And core stability prevents disc injuries to the lumbar spine. Now let's look at the feet. So the important thing about the feet in yoga practice is knowing about the arches. So an arch is a structure that spans a space that supports weight above it. And you have several arches in your feet. They're not all readily visible, but the main one is the medial arch. This is the big toe side of the foot. It's formed by these bones called the calcaneus, the talus, the navicular cuneiforms, and metatarsals. You don't need to remember that, but just know that there are a lot of bones that come together. And because of that, there's quite a bit of mobility there. It's important in asana, especially when the feet are on the ground, that we lift the arches. And the way that we do that is a bit different from other places in the body, how we move other joints, because the arches are lifted from above. There are muscles above the arches, above the ankles in the lower legs, that form a sort of stirrup of muscle and connective tissue, and those lift the arch from above. So you'll learn lots more about your body in an actual yoga class. These are the parts that are considered to be helpful to know about before your first yoga class. And good luck with that.